guys, it's Dasha. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to part 2 of 3 videos that I'm doing all about series. So if you missed the first one, go back and watch it. It'll be linked, but I already talked about series that I don't really want to continue, I don't really want to finish. So today I thought I'd go over all the series that I'm really excited to continue. And for those of you who are not fantasy or sci-fi fans, that's fair. In October, I will be talking completely about horror, and in November, I will be focusing on nonfiction. So I'm gonna, try to spread it out a little bit, but I really want to talk about a little bit of fantasy and sci-fi series, as that is my favorite genre, and I definitely wanted to have like a comprehensive list of some series that I won't be finishing, and some that I want to start, which is going to be the next video. So there will be a few sections to this video. The first one will be manga, it's going to be short and sweet. The section after that will be series that are currently finished, every book is published, and the final section will be series that are currently ongoing, so not all of the books have been published yet. Starting off with manga, there are only 2 series, it's going to be short and sweet. We have the Full Metal Alchemist series. This is a shonen manga, meaning it is primarily targeted towards teenage boys, although it can of course be read and enjoyed by all audiences, and it follows 2 brothers who lost some limbs and other things in an alchemical experiment gone wrong, and they are on a quest to recover their whole selves and discover a bit more about their family and their past. I love this series. It is such a good mix of action and fantasy and humor and emotion. This series is like laugh out loud funny, and then like a few pages later you start tearing up. It's just so well crafted. I love the art. It's a little more silly. It's not as like artistic. It's a little more light-hearted in terms of the art style, but there's a lot of interesting topics of like family and like finding your place and that kind of thing that I really enjoy. The plot has been extremely slow going so far, but honestly I just love the characters and the world is so intriguing, and the plot is even really intriguing, so I'm really excited to see where it goes. So as of right now, when I'm filming this, I have completed 3 volumes. I own the 4th as well, and there will be 27 volumes in total, which shit's gonna get expensive because I'm collecting these lovely editions, but I love them so much. And then the other manga series is of course Death Note. This is a seinen manga, meaning it is targeted towards adult men, but again it can be enjoyed by anyone who is mature enough to handle some of the stuff in here because it's a little scary. If you don't know, this is another one of my favorite series of all time. It follows Light, who is an exceptionally bright college student who's becoming quite bored with his life, and he decides that he needs something to happen to him, and wouldn't you know it, he finds a death note on the ground. Death notes are notebooks that are traditionally held by Shinigami death gods, and whoever's name is written in the book, they will die. And so Light comes across one of these, so you get these interesting explorations of ethics and of morality, and there's just an interesting character cast in here that I didn't expect to enjoy so much. The intrigue in this series is so well done. The book always feels like it's like 5 steps ahead of you, and you just never know what's gonna happen, but it always makes sense. And it's just so fantastically crafted. Cat and mouse chase is just so twisty and gripping, and you just never know who's gonna pull out what and what kind of characters are gonna appear, and that just makes it so much more enjoyable. Currently, I have only read 2 volumes of these Black Edition that I'm collecting, so each of these contain 2 volumes of the regular editions, and I do own the 3rd one, and there are in total 6 of these. So I'm probably going to try and collect the last 3 and then just reread the first 2 and read through all of them to finish it off, because this is a series you definitely want to binge. There's just so much going on, you need to know what happens next, and honestly I tried getting around to this one, but I found that it would be just so much fun if I could binge it all. So I can't wait to get my hands on the rest of these. It is completed and I am like so excited to read through all of it. Alright, so now we're moving on to the currently completed series that are just regular novels. The first of which is the Farseer trilogy by Robin Hobb, and honestly beyond that, the entire realm of the Elderlings. There are a ton of series within this one universe, but in this series specifically you follow Fitz, who is the bastard son of the prince who is next in line for the throne. When the prince finds out that he has a bastard son, however, he abdicates and they gotta figure out what to do with Fitz. so they decide to make him a royal assassin. This series, however, is not action-packed. It's not like full of usual intrigue. It's more political, slow burn, angsty intrigue. And even though you think like assassin series would be pretty exciting, you're really just following Fitz in his journey, but it is so well written. Robin Hobb's writing is truly just blowing my mind every time I pick up one of her books, so I cannot wait to finish and wrap up this series. So as of filming this, I have completed the first one. I am making my way through the second, and I absolutely do want to read the third, but this world also contains 3 more trilogies, a quartet, and some short stories. So there's a lot of stuff to get through. The next series I am just dying to really get back into is the Tensert series by Neon Yang. So this is a series of standalone, but like companion novellas, meaning they can stand on their own, but like you can read them all because they give just more context into the world and characters. And they are full of just Asian mythology and lore and this beauty. The writing is so fantastic and it's so unique, and I absolutely just fell in love with it. I read it in one sitting, obviously, and I fell head over heels. There are 4 novellas that are published. You can actually buy them in a bind-up that's going to be released soon, so I am thinking of just getting rid of this one and buying all 4 of them, but they all have such beautiful covers. This is the only one I have read, but I absolutely will be making my way through all the other ones because they're just phenomenal. So the next series on this list is the Poppy War trilogy by R.F. Kuang. This is an adult, very dark fantasy that is set in the time period of the Sino-Japanese War, as well as taking some elements from the Opium Wars, and you're following Rin, who is discovering these shamanic powers at the military academy. And I have read only the first book and I fell completely head over heels. I am absolutely in love with the story, and even though the writing is nothing particularly special, I think that Rebecca Kuang's point of view is fantastic in this series. I think there's something really, really special about the messages she brings into it and the way she breathes history to life. So I am super excited to continue this series. Like I said, I have read only the first one, and there are 2 other books, the third one having just been published late last year, I think. And I'm so excited to just get my hands on all of them. I've been just trying to wait till all 3 of them have been available at once in hardcover, because I do really want to pick them up in the hardcover. I think they're beautiful, but they haven't been in my area, so I've been just like waiting. But I'm dying to get back to the series, back into these characters, and reread the Poppy War, I think, is going to be my plan. I don't know, maybe I don't need to. Let me know if any of you have read these kind of like summaries, plot summaries. I'd love to be able to annotate like my own copy, but I'm thinking of just saying screw it and just reading it because I so want to know what happens. So let me know if you've read any of the plot summaries and if you found them just as helpful as rereading and it was enough for you to continue, or if you really think it's worth rereading, because I'm on the fence about this one. The next series on this list is the Southern Reach trilogy by Jeff Vandermeer. So this contains 3 novellas. I have a bind-up of the 3 in here, and this is an adult kind of sci-fi horror series about this mysterious place called Area X. You're following one of the expeditions that's going to try to research it, because there's always these really weird results anytime anyone goes into the area for research purposes. And I read the first book last year, gave it 5 stars even though I don't know what was going on the whole time, but I loved every minute of it. It's a very trippy book. It is a very weird blend of sci-fi and fantasy and horror, unlike anything I've ever read. And although I know the other 2 books in this series don't quite focus on Area X as much, I still would like to finish them because I think that the first one was just so unique, and I am a little bit intrigued. I do think it wrapped up well on its own, but I do think that I enjoyed this story and this world enough to want to continue on with it. The next series is a beloved one here on BookTube. It is the Arc of the Scythe trilogy by Neil Shusterman. This is a young adult dystopian utopian series about a world where humans have conquered death. So in order to deal with population control, people are still allowed to kill other people. They're just a designated class of workers that are allowed to kill other people. So you're following apprentices of this class. They're called scythes, and you are basically just kind of seeing the inner mechanics, but there's all these politics at play. I read the first one twice. I absolutely fell in love with it, especially the second time I read it. I just didn't realize how much depth there was to it. And then I read Thunderhead last year, and I thought it was, don't come for me, I didn't think it was as good as Scythe. I think it definitely blew the world open a little bit, and you got to see some more interesting elements. One thing Neil Shusterman does really, really well is he answers answers questions you didn't know you had about his own world. And I think that's just the mark of someone so masterful, that it is woven so seamlessly into the story. In this case, it was through another character that you didn't follow in the first book. And it's a really good idea. I just didn't quite enjoy the overall plot and where the story went in this one. But the third book is out. I do have access to it on Scribd. It is called The Toll, and I will be trying to get to it at some point. I don't know if I really want to reread this, but I do kind of want to just wrap the series up, because as everyone knows, the second book ended on such a cliffhanger that, like, I gotta know what happens at this point. And I do enjoy Neil Shusterman's writing enough to want to continue and wrap up the series. I do have another young adult series on this list. I think it is the only other one, and that is The Diviners by Libba Bray. So this is a quartet following a large cast of characters set in 1920s New York City, and they all have these strange powers that they all suddenly developed, and they try to keep them under wraps, but they kind of end up finding one another through this. There's all sorts of paranormal intrigue. Listen, I absolutely love this series. I know people's main complaint is that the characters, especially our main character Evie, is not like the best developed, or is a little bit annoying, and that this book is entirely too long, so much so that nobody wants to continue because the other ones are still pretty lengthy. And while I understand the criticism, I do not accept it. I absolutely love this series. I think that the characters are just so different. I think that the social issues from the 1920s and the political issues that were happening at this time were so well placed in here. Like, they were woven in so well that it just breathed such a life into this. And even though paranormal and like urban settings are not usually my favorite types of fantasy, I think that this is just on a different level beyond anything that I have read. And I think it definitely features a little bit of elements of horror and a little darkness that you don't necessarily see in a lot of young adult fantasies, similar to Number in the Ashes, which was one of my other favorite things about that series. I really do enjoy these kind of darker elements and this exploration of the occult and these darker themes in young adult. So I will absolutely be continuing on with the series. As of now, I have read this one and Lair of Dreams, which is the second book, and I have two left, Before the Devil Breaks You and The King of Crows. I will absolutely reread the first two books and then continue on, so I don't think that's a project for this year, but I am really looking forward to continuing this series, seeing what happens. I know a lot of people were disappointed by the fourth book, but honestly, I'm just looking forward to being back in this world with these characters. There's even a romance in here that I quite enjoy, and it's so good. And I find it still underhyped. I know it is a booktube darling, but I find as a whole, it's not as beloved as it absolutely should be, because I think this is so unique and so special. And finally in this category, we have one that I have not shut up about. It is the Dreamblood duology by N.K. Jemisin. This is an adult fantasy series set in this ancient Egypt-inspired city. There's all sorts of dream magic and blood magic. There are assassin priests. There is a king gone rogue. I read the first book, The Killing Moon, back in January, and it is still the best book I think I've read this year. Honestly, it is just so special, beautiful, funny, heartbreaking, sexy. It's just got everything I could want from a fantasy. This is by far my favorite N.K. Jemisin that I have read, and everything that people saw in her before, I saw in this series. It completely blew me away, and I can't wait to read the sequel. I'm definitely gonna get around to it this year. I'm like dying. So The Shadowed Sun is the only one left, since it is a duology, and I can't wait to continue. All right, and then the last section is a bunch of books that are part of series that have not been yet completed. Now, there is a lot of speculation about some of these. I'm not sure exactly where we are in all of them, but I'm gonna, try my best, because some of them were announced after the fact, I think. So let's get into it. The first one of these is These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong. This is a young adult duology set in 1920s Shanghai, and it is a Romeo and Juliet reimagining featuring rival gang members, and it is just chef's kiss. I read this in February, and I really was pleasantly surprised at how intricate it was. It just wasn't what I expected, I think is the best way I can put it. And Our Violent Ends, I think, is the sequel. It's being released later this year in November, if I'm not mistaken, and I'm really excited for it. I think I am gonna go ahead and pre-order it when I am able to, and I can't wait to read the sequel. All right, the next series, I don't know if I can hold this up, but I want to, for sake of continuity. A Song of Ice and Fire by George R. R. Martin. This is an adult political fantasy set in a more or less medieval-inspired world. Obviously, it inspired the hit TV show A Game of Thrones. There are 5 currently published books, of which I have read all of them. finally. And there are 2 more books planned in this series, and we have no idea when they're coming out, so that hurts. But I am caught up. This is one of my favorite series of all time. I think it is immaculate. I love it. If you've been here before, you know how much I love this series. So I'm not going to ramble on about it, but yes, this is one I am absolutely going to continue once we do get another book, which might not even be in my lifetime. Next, so this is one of those weird ones. I have the Villains Duology by V.E. Schwab. So this is an adult kind of sci-fi fantasy. You're following these college roommates who decide to conduct these very dangerous experiments in order to gain supernatural abilities, because that is part of their thesis for university, and they become mortal enemies. So this was slated to only be a duology. I think actually it was slated to just be a standalone, and then it got a sequel, and I believe V.E. Schwab is in the works of writing a 3rd one. So the first 2 books are currently published. I have read the first, Vicious. There is also Vengeful, which is out, and the 3rd one that is somewhere in V.E. Schwab's mind is potentially coming out in the future. So I'm considering this a series that's not yet finished, but as of now, if I just complete Vengeful, I'm just gonna count it as finished until we know for sure what's happening with the 3rd one. But I did quite enjoy it. I thought it was super fast paced. While I don't typically get along with V.E. Schwab's characters very well, these were definitely the most compelling ones I had read, and I loved the plot and how nothing meandered. It was to the point, it was gripping, and I really did enjoy this the best out of all of her series. If you saw my last video, I put the Darker Shade of Magic series in that video because I really wasn't sure if I wanted to continue. I didn't think I did. I didn't like the characters or the plot, despite really enjoying the premise, but this worked overall for me really well, so I can't wait to finish this duology off, trilogy, if it happens. The next one is, again, kind of a weird one. I have the Mistborn Saga by Brandon Sanderson. So this is the first book, The Final Empire, and Mistborn Era 1, which is the first trilogy. And then there's Mistborn Era 2, which has another trilogy or quartet. And then there will be a 3rd era. So this is an adult fantasy set in this world where people can ingest metals to perform magical abilities, and it's got a revolution plot, it's got a ragtag group of thieves. I really loved it when I read this, and I thought that it finished quite well, so I don't need a race to read the sequel. But I absolutely do want to finish off this trilogy. I would like to read the Mistborn Era 2 trilogy as well, and continue on eventually. I have no idea what's happening. I'm not as involved in like Brandon Sanderson news as a lot of his fans are, because this is the only thing I've ever read by him, but I'm absolutely like in love with it. Can't wait to read more of his works. I just don't know what's happening with this series. As far as I know, so this one is kind of set in a almost Victorian era, because it's kind of very Industrial Revolution-esque, and the second one is set in a more like Western, like Wild West setting, and the 3rd one is going to be kind of futuristic. So I don't know what's happening with this series, but I'm intrigued and I'm along for the ride. The next one's not going to be a surprise to anyone. I can't imagine it would be. I have the Gentleman Bastard trilogy by Scott Lynch, an adult high fantasy series following a group of thieves that I'm absolutely obsessed with. And this is slated to be a 7-book series. Currently only 3 of them are published. The 4th is supposed to be released later this year, but it's been getting pushed back for like 5 years now, probably more. And so I'm like dying to keep working my way through it and get my hands on it. As of right now, I have read this one twice. I am currently reading this one, and I still have this one to go, and then the 4th one that might be published. We have, I believe, titles for the other 3, but I'm not 100% sure, or at least for a couple of them, but we don't even have sight of the 4th one yet. We just have like a cover title and alleged release dates, so I don't know what's happening. I love this series with all my heart. I'm just so hoping that we get more of it soon so I can just continue binging it, because it's been so much fun so far. One of my favorite books of last year, The Bone Shard Daughter by Andrea Stewart, is getting a sequel this year. It's coming out later this year, and I am so excited. So this is an adult fantasy set in this world where there are like floating islands that move around, and the magic in this is bone shard magic. So the emperor creates these creatures using bone shards taken from his subjects, and it's just the most beautiful, heartbreaking thing I've ever read. I got it as an ARC from NetGalley, and honestly it was like the best decision I've ever made to just sit down, read it in like 2 days, 2 sittings, because I was hooked. The sequel is The Bone Shard Emperor, I believe, and again coming in November, and I believe this will be a trilogy, and I'm just so excited. I'm so excited. I love this book. I know book clubs were kind of picking this one up here and there, and everyone had a lot of mixed opinions, but like for me, one of the best books of last year. Absolutely fantastic. Nothing I've ever read before, and I would die for Mephi. So I can't wait to continue on with that series. We are getting close to the end, I promise. The next series I want to talk about is the Wayward Children series by Sean McGuire. I only have the first book here, Every Heart a Doorway. This is a series of kind of like the Tensert series. It's these standalone companion novellas, and they are all set in this world where children travel through like magical portals to other worlds, and when they return, they're kind of discombobulated. So they get sent to Eleanor Wayward's home for wayward children? Eleanor West's home. Eleanor West's home for wayward children. And they basically are with other children, and they're kind of going through therapy and stuff. And I read the first one, and this is one I debated on for a while, but I think these are great for readathons because they are so quick. They're light, even though they deal with a lot of difficult subjects. They're light enough to kind of breeze through during a readathon. I believe there will be 8 in total, and there are 6 currently published. So there's a lot of them out. The only thing I hate about these is these are novellas, and they still cost 25 Canadian dollars for not even a whole book. It hurts my cheap heart. I found this one at a thrift store, which is why I picked it up, and now I'm like, well, shit, now I'd love to get the rest of them to match. But they're always available on audiobook on Scribd and at the library, so I'm hoping I can get through them all that way for, like, again, readathons. But yeah, this is definitely an interesting one, and I would like to continue it. I think it's a good, quick, unique fantasy read for sure. And the final series is the Founders Trilogy by Robert Jackson Bennett. This is an adult fantasy following a thief set in this kind of Medici-era Florence-inspired city. I love the setting. I loved the story. I think that there's some really interesting political stuff going on here, and the magic is really cool. Very similar to the Bone Shard Daughter, honestly. It's kind of like coding, but magical. I love it. And so this is the first book. This is the only one I have read. Shorefall, the sequel, is currently published, and as far as I know, there's no release date for the third book or even a name or like cover, but I am really excited to continue on. If anyone knows if Shorefall is going to come out in paperback at all, because it's been out for a while now and I can't seem to find it in paperback, it'd be nice because like a lot of money. Yeah, I definitely absolutely have really enjoyed the series. I found this read a little young adult, so like it'd be good for people who are just transitioning from young adult to adult fantasy, but overall it was really unique, and I can't wait to explore the world more, so I can't wait for the series to kind of wrap up. Maybe I'd wait for the whole thing to wrap up to read onto the second book and then finish off, but it's definitely one I'm going to continue, and I really enjoyed it. All right, friends, that was it. That wasn't as bad as I thought it was gonna be, honestly. So keep an eye out for the next video, which will be series I am like dying to start, like my priority TBR series. And again, if you're not a fantasy person, first of all, thank you for sticking around, and keep an eye out in October for all the horror videos, and then in November for all the nonfiction stuff. My social media is linked down below. You guys can always come talk to me there. Other than that, thank you so much for watching. Let me know which one of these you liked, which one of these you're going to continue, what you thought of them, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!